this video I'm going to show you how to do a double crochet and how to create a mug cozy. Just to say, you are going to notice halfway through this video that suddenly the wall changes colour. So I had recorded this already and I don't know what happened on YouTube and on my phone, but it got deleted. So yeah, I'm going to re-record it. So just in case you're like, why is that a totally different colour piece later on? That is why. Okay, so I have done a slip knot, so that is how we start all the projects. So for your mug cozy, you are going to be doing chains, which you should be pros at now after the coasters. If you're not, you will be by the end of this, because you're going to now create a chain of 50. That's right, 50. I'm only going to do part of that because, as I said, I've already made this. I'm just doing this to show you how to start off the mug cozy. It is good to do this bit silently. You don't want to suddenly get part way through and lose count and have to then go and count all 50. So for example, while I'm talking and trying to do the video, I have no idea how many I just did. 10. No, we're going to go with right, I'll do a few extra. So you're actually creating a chain of 46 and then doing 4 extra on the end, because what those 4 extra will be for, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just to show you that this one here is your first one, you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the 5th one. This is where my needle's going to go, my hook's going to go in, so I'll hold that to be sure that I'm going into the correct one. The reason you do the extra is because these then create the height. I don't know if you remember on the coaster, we chained 1 extra and went into the 2nd stitch, and that creates the first stitch of your piece, rather than if you just went straight into doing a double crochet, it would pull your piece in a little bit. It will make a bit more sense once I do this, once I've completed the stitch. So the stitch, a double crochet, you bring your, rather than going straight into the chain like you would on a single crochet, first you're going to bring the hook towards you, hook from underneath. So you're doing that first and then going through that chain. This is a little bit fiddly, this first one, because you've got such a big bit here that you can't really hold on to. So you'll know you've done that correctly when you've hooked through, because you'll have 3 loops on there. So you loop again and you just pull through the first one so that you've got, you like this, look, there we go. So on the single crochet you would then pull through all of them, but in this you pull through the first 2 and then you're left with 2 loops on there, and then you pull through both. And then this is what I mean about this one. This has created a 2nd stitch for you alongside. I'm trying to show you. That becomes the 1st stitch and this is now the 2nd. So you'll see that this hole here looks really big and you think, oh, that's where the next stitch goes into. But the reason it looks so big is because that's the one you've just done. And this is pulling it larger and then making the next one smaller. So as you go along, that will then shrink in size, if that makes sense. So you want to go into this one next, the next loop. So bring the hook towards you, hook underneath, then go through that loop, hook again and pull it through that. So you've now got 3 on there. Hook again, pull through 2, hook again and pull through the last 2. And what you've created there is your first 3 double crochets. So I can show you. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's really creepy. Sorry to interrupt, my dog's barked and then my son's Tony box has just turned on. Okay, well, this is going to turn into a Blair Witch video. Right, so we've done our 3 stitches, 3 double crochets. So what we do next is we skip 1 stitch. So we skip this chain and we go into the next one. Got my thumb on it so I know where I'm going. And as we said, it's looping it, going through that chain. So you've got 3 on the hook, looping again and pulling just through the first chain so that it's now attached. You pull it through the first one so it's all now attached. And then normally on a single crochet it's 1 single pull through, but on a double crochet it's 2. So you're going to go once with 2 and then twice with 2, if that makes sense. So now we've got our 3, a gap and then 1. So then we just keep going with that. So it's, let's go through the stitch again slowly. So you're bringing the hook towards yourself and hooking underneath. That's then going through the hole. So you can always, I sometimes use this finger to guide it through, especially at the first few rows when it's quite thin and hard to grab. So you're then hooking it under again, just pulling it through. So that's attaching it to that pull through you've just done has attached it to this first row of chains. You've then got 3 loops. These 3 loops are now creating your stitch. So if you can see, what you've done is you've attached it really by doing that to the bottom, to this bottom. So then when you pull through, that first double crochet, part of the double crochet is giving you what you would get from doing 1 single crochet. That's the shape you get when you do 1 double crochet, but because you're doing 2 of them, it's basically then just doubling the height. So if you can see, it creates like a 2. So it's quite a good stitch for, it's the most commonly used one because of that, because you can create bigger pieces a lot quicker. So do that again. As I say, use my finger just to guide it through that hole. Pull it through, that's now hooked it on. So then you're going through the first 2 loops and then the second 2. So I've now got 3, a gap and then 3. Now these look a lot bigger, but you'll notice these ones that looked quite big when I first did them, now that I've carried on, they've shrunk. So where you've done the hole, like I said before, it makes that one look bigger because it's pulling it up. Just the further you go along, it just sort of averages out kind of thing. So like that hole is always smaller because this one is, that next hole you're going into always looks a little bit smaller because that one has pulled it tight. So when you pull this, it then pulls that one tighter. Also to say, obviously I'm doing this is how we're doing the mug cozy, so the gap etc. is for doing the mug cozy design. You wouldn't need to skip that on all patterns. It depends on what pattern you're doing and what you're creating. So 3, gap, 3, so I need another gap and then I go in again. And that is the pattern you're going to follow all the way to the end. 3, a gap, 3, a gap. And then I will join you when we have both reached the end of our piece. And voila. I'm guessing mine took a lot less time than yours, seeing as I only had about 15 chains to go into, whereas I think you guys have got about 3 times that. So as you can see, there is 3, a gap, 3, a gap, 3, a gap, and 3 on mine. Now I have got a little tail here. You shouldn't have that. That's just where I just did a random amount of chains. So there's 1 extra chain on the end I haven't used. So just ignore that. Okay, so what we're going to do now at the end of it, every time you get to the end of the row for this, you're going to chain 3, and that is because it's creating the first stitch of the next row. So we're going to then flip it. So we've got 3 here, and then we've got the first gap. So that gap is what we're going to now sew into, or stitch into, sorry. So we're going to do a double crochet into it. And when I say into it, I mean into the big hole, like here, into that huge hole. It feels weird when you're doing it because normally you're stitching into something, so you'd be going into the chain. So like when we've done the single crochet on the coasters, you'd have been going through these 2 lines here. If you were doing a different piece, that is what you would do. You would go straight into these here, but for this particular pattern, we're going into the gaps. Okay, so we're going into there, so come over. Tell you what though, they're a lot quicker and easier to do because you haven't got to concentrate on where they're going. They're a nice big hole to go through. So over, through the first 2, and the second 2. And then, because you've done those 3, that has created, let me just show you, that has created the first stitch here. So it's still going to be straight up there. I don't know if you can see that. It's going up and along. So we're going to do 3 double crochets into this hole. So I've done the first one. So let's go through it slowly again. Hook towards me, hook underneath, go through the big hole, hook again, and pull that through, back through the hole. So you've now got your 3 bits on there. Through the first 2, hook, and through the second 2. And then we'll do that again. Hook over, push through, pull through, first 2, second 2, and then we have created our first 3 double crochets into that. And it's giving you, if you might recognise from having seen the mug cozies, that first sort of 3, like a triangle, just there. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 double crochets into every gap that you've got. So you're going to just jump, you're not going to do any chains or anything, you're just going to jump straight into the double crochets. And then that's kind of what gives it the triangle shape, because it's pulling, you can see it's pulling the top ends outwards, so that's why it then creates like a triangle design. And then a third one. There we go. Yeah. See what I mean about it pulling it outwards. So by the power of video, I'm going to see you in a second when I'm at the end of my row. Well, I may as well have just kept recording because I actually had one more hole to go for my little piece. So I've done to the end hole, and then we've got our 3 lines here. So what you're going to do now is you're going to do it into this gap here between the first 2 stitches. Okay, so you've gone on along all of the holes, all of the big holes, and then at the very end you've got 3 stitches there. So you're going to go into that gap there. Do a double crochet, and then that is creating, you pull it along, that now created a gap here. So as I said, whenever you get to the end of the row, you're going to chain 3, and then flip it. Now when we got to the end of this row, when we flipped it, we moved to the first gap and did 3. Now this is now the first gap here. Now when we got to the end of this row, we chained 3 and we went into the first gap that was here and started our 3 double crochets. But where we've done this stitch, we've created a gap here. So this is where we start. We go straight in with 3 double crochets into this new gap we just created. So you're going to do 3 double crochets into that. 2 double crochets because you've already done your chain, which is your first stitch. So you're doing 2 double crochets into that, which gives you your 3 stitches. There you go, and then that's your straight edge there, got your 3, and then you're going to jump to the next gap, which would be here. And then you're going to go along doing 3 double crochets all the way along. So I'm now at the end of my row. I've done 3 double crochets into that gap, and then just to go over with you again what you do next, so you're chaining 3 and flipping it, and then you're going to go into the next gap, which is here. So if you're staying the same colour, you're just going to keep doing this until you have got 6 rows. So at the moment we've got 1, 2, 3. So when you want to count, if it's all the same colour, you just count diagonally and you'll see. So you want 6 rows. But what I will show you is if you want to change colour, how to do that. You might want to do stripes, you might want to do different sections. So mine is changing colour purely because I've got a ball of wool that's got lots of different colours in it, but you might want to do, for example, red, white, red, white. So what I'm going to show you applies to any of these layers. So if you were going to do every other stripe, you would have only done this first line here, and then you might have changed your colour for this second one. So it's quite simple to do. So you've reached the end, however that end is, whether it's this here, or whether it's on 3, whether it's 3 or 1, you would do a slip stitch, end it in exactly the same way you would end it in any other circumstance, pull that through, tug that, and that tightens that off. That row is now finished. For the next row, you actually go back to the beginning end, and then what you would do, if it was a hole at the end, so if it was, for example, this row, you would go through the hole. If on this circumstance it's the 3, you're going through the first link. You're going to put your wool over the top, pull it through, so it's just through the hole. It's not tucked into any of these stitches, it's just in between the first and the second of these stitches. You're going to go over with both bits of wool, pull through, so that tightens it on. You're then going to start this row with your new wool. So you would chain 3, and because in this way you're starting with the 3, you're just going to leave that as your first row and go into the hole. So I've just completed that colour change row, tied off again at the end. I just want to show you what I mean about the difference based on whether, so the one we've just done, we've gone into, there's the 3 stitches and we've gone in there. Now we've got a gap. So when you're changing wool on this one, you go through that hole. Pulling it through that gap there. Look. Touching it on like that. Drop in the towel, and then you're just going to 1, 2, 3, chain 3, that's your first stitch. And then like we would do on any of these other gaps, we want 3 stitches into it. So the chain constitutes the first stitch, so we just need 2 double crochets into it as the second and third stitch. And that's creating our next section on that row. It's quite dark there, just see. Yeah, it's a bit better. So that's created the first section on that row. So then we would move on to this gap here and do 3 in here and carry on as we've been doing. If you change colours, the only thing with that is obviously it involves a lot more weaving. So we've got 1, 2, 3 here. If I'd done it every row, we'd have another one here, another one here. Well, if we're doing 6 rows, you basically have six bits of tail to weave in at the end. But that's how you do it. So what looks quite nice if you are going to do stripes is to try and end on the colour you start with, because it creates a frame around it. I'm not going to achieve that with this because, as I said, the colour of the wool is just changing as the wool goes on, so it's probably going to end on like a yellow, I think. But yeah, so I will come back when I've got my 6 rows. So you'll see I now have my 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you've done it all in one colour, I mean, I'm sure you're going to know that you've done 6, but you can just count diagonally, just to double check. So now what we're going to do is create the loop that attaches this to the handle of the mug. So what you're going to do is you are going to create a chain of 18. And this is going to take a loop that you then connect to the bottom half, and then after that we're going to do a trim all the way around the edge to neaten it. So I'm counting in my head whilst talking, so it will be interesting when we get to 18 if it actually is at 18. I wonder if any of you are counting them as I do it, or if you're doing yours at the same time. Right, let's just double check. I think I'm at 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right. What's going on here? Okay, and 18. So we have our chain of 18. So you're then going to attach it to the other side. So you're going to go through, if you look at the top here, you're going to see all of the chains. You're going to go through the top of this first stitch, and it might be fiddly because this one is potentially separated. If you're like me, depends how many rows you've done, you might be finishing on this end, which is much easier to finish on because it's a nice solid end. But if it's one that's been divided like this, you just need to try and wriggle through. That's it. So you should have 2 loops at the top and 1 underneath. You shouldn't be going through the whole gap, otherwise it's not going to be very secure. So then you're going to pull that through. And there, come attached, sorry, moved off screen. You pull that through, and that's a single crochet to secure that on. And then when you do more along here, that's going to secure that even further. So the next step is to do single crochet stitches all the way along. It's going to be some great practice. Not that you'll need it after doing the coaster, but it is literally this into all, what we're going to be at, 50? is it 50? I don't know if it, yeah, 50 single crochets all the way along. But you'll notice that you are much quicker at them now than you were when you did your coaster. So just keep going all the way to the other end. Here you'll see the single crochet has created a nice border around the edge, although I've lost the blue colour, which I quite liked, but that's the way it goes. Now you're going to chain 18 again to make the second loop that will go onto the handle of the cup. And I realise I'm not even doing it on screen, so that's useful too, isn't it? So there we are, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yep, so chaining 18. I mean, this should be something you're a pro at by now after the 50 you started with. Now the 2 lots of 18, that's like 92 crochets, chain stitches you'll have done in this one project. Do you ever count and then you hear a different number and then it stops you counting? Oh, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I was the one that said the numbers as well. It's not even like it was someone else. There we go. Now we're going to sew into the top of this. So you can see the chains. So we're going into this one here. It's not. Yeah, there it is. It's not the very end one, but it is. So it will actually help pull this little line out and straighten it. So that's a single crochet to secure that on. And then back to doing single crochets all the way along. Oh, I went to do a double crochet there, as you can tell. Got into the habit of doing them there from doing this project. And I'll meet you back at the other end. So here we have the finished mug cozy, all framed out, edged out now. I've just cut this off to just finish off. You just do a slip stitch, pull it through, and then pull that hard. And then on the back, you're going to see that you've got a number of edges to weave in. There is a separate video I've done on how to weave all the edges in. It's a long and boring process. It's the bit I actually enjoy the least. So I'm not going to show you how to do it on this. You can just watch the other video. But that's it. Pull it back a bit. That's not really pulled it back very far. There we go. And it's done. Quite like this one.